You're on a $13 billion US aircraft carrier, and 72 Chinese hypersonic missiles just appeared on radar. Each one costs $5 million. Simultaneously, 60 Iranian suicide drones are swarming in from the flank. That's $360 million of steel flying straight at your face. To stop them with traditional missiles, you'd have to spend $170 million in 60 seconds. If you miss, game over. But instead, we're hitting a button that costs less than a single 30mm bullet. This is the HELIOS laser, and it just made invading the Pacific a financial suicide mission. Today, we're running the 2026 war game that Beijing and Tehran didn't see coming. Physics-Defying laser, the saturation trap. China doesn't want to fight a fair fight. They want to fight a math fight. Their entire naval doctrine is built on one word: saturation. Beijing's wall of steel strategy is designed to do one thing: overwhelm US defenses by launching more missiles than a destroyer has bullets to stop them. On paper, a single Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is a fortress with 96 vertical launch system cells. But as of early 2026, those 96 cells have become a terrifyingly small number. The crisis is one of magazine depth. The US Navy is currently facing a massive structural deficit as the Ticonderoga-class cruisers and Ohio-class SSGNs retire, taking over 2,080 VLS cells out of the inventory by 2027. This means every single remaining cell is 10 times more precious than it was a decade ago. Here is the weaponized math of a 2026 clash: China's DF-21D carrier killer and the new YJ-21 hypersonic missile travel at Mach 10. Because these missiles are so fast and maneuverable, current US doctrine, validated during Operation Epic Fury in the Red Sea, requires a shoot-shoot-look sequence. This means firing at least 2 interceptors for every one incoming threat to guarantee a kill. If a Chinese Type 055 destroyer ripples out a salvo of just 48 missiles, your $2 billion US destroyer has to empty its entire 96-cell magazine just to survive the first 60 seconds of the war. Now look at the front cost of that 60-second engagement. One SM-6 Block YA interceptor now commands a price tag of $4.8 million, while the even more advanced Block YB, designed specifically for hypersonic threats, is projected to hit $9 million per unit. To stop that 48-missile salvo, the US Navy burns through $460 million in interceptors in 1 minute. But the cost isn't the worst part, it's the mission kill. Once those cells are empty, that ship is effectively a $2 billion floating duck. It has to leave the combat zone and travel thousands of miles to a specialized port just to reload. China's play is to trade $5 million missiles for $9 million interceptors, until the US Navy simply runs out of bullets to fire. They aren't trying to out-tech the Navy, they're trying to outproduce it. But the HELIOS laser just ripped that entire playbook in half. The light speed, glitch breaking the matrix. Imagine China just spent $360 million on a single missile wave, and you're about to delete it for the price of a box of 30mm ammo. This isn't just a new weapon, it's a total glitch in the weaponized math of modern warfare. Right now, the US Navy isn't just testing lasers in a lab, they've gone live. As of March 2026, the USS Preble is sitting in the Pacific with the HELIOS system fully integrated into its Aegis brain. This isn't a bolt-on experiment. It's a permanent 8.5-ton titanium beast that has already proven it can melt a cruise missile's nose cone in mid-flight. How they built the reverse prism. To understand why this is revolutionary, you have to look at how they actually make the beam. You can't just turn up the volume on one laser, it would melt itself. Instead, Lockheed Martin used a process called spectral beam combining. Think of it like a reverse prism. In school, you learned a prism takes white light and splits it into a rainbow. HELIOS does the opposite. It takes dozens of individual fiber laser modules, each tuned to a slightly different color or wavelength, and slams them into a high-efficiency diffraction grating. This grating spatially overlaps the beams into one single high-intensity death ray. The result? A 60-kilowatt beam that moves at 186,000 miles per second. Against a Chinese YJ-21 moving at Mach 10, the laser doesn't need to lead the target. There is no travel time. By the time the missile's computer realizes it's being painted, its guidance sensors have already turned into liquid glass. But the real front cost winner is the day-to-day data. Cost per shot is roughly $1 to $10, or the cost of the fuel to run the ship's generators. For comparison, one SM-6 Block IB costs $9.5 million per unit, plus another $1 billion in 30-year maintenance costs for the fleet. There's also the cooling factor. To keep this thing from exploding, the Navy uses seawater cooling loops that pump thousands of gallons through the system every minute. As long as the ship has fuel and the ocean is wet, you have an infinite magazine. The Navy's plan? They are already scaling this from 60 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts and 500 kilowatts benchmarks. The USS Preble is sitting in Japan right now, ready to prove that China's $360 million salvo just became the most expensive light show in history. The 2026 war game, rerunning the swarm. Now that you know the light speed glitch, let's rerun that nightmare scenario from the intro, but this time we have the HELIOS online and it's a total game changer. It's early 2026 and the USS Preble is patrolling the Luzon Strait near Taiwan. Suddenly the radar screen explodes. This is it. The axis of attrition has arrived. On your display, 72 Chinese YJ-21 hypersonics are screaming in from the mainland, while 60 Iranian-made Shahed 139 drones, likely launched from civilian cargo ships, are low-crawling over the waves to blind your sensors. In the old world, this was a $170 million death sentence. But in the 2026 war game, the front cost of survival just bottomed out. As the swarm enters the 10-mile kill zone, the HELIOS system doesn't wait for a human to aim. It is now fully integrated into the Aegis Baseline 10 combat system, the ship's actual brain. This is huge because for the first time in history, the ship can automatically decide which target gets a $9 million missile and which target gets a $1 beam of light. While the ship's SM-6 missiles are reserved for the highest altitude ballistic threats, the laser takes out the trash. It begins a rapid-fire sequence, spending only 3 to 5 seconds on each Iranian drone. In a recent secret trial in late 2025, the Preble proved this works by vaporizing 4 targets in a single engagement. By the time the drones are within 2 miles of the hull, the laser has already deleted 40 of them. Total cost for 40 kills? Literally less than $400. But here is where it gets absolutely insane. As the YJ-21 hypersonics hit their terminal phase at Mach 10, they generate a massive heat signature. Usually that heat makes them harder to hit with missiles, but for a laser, it's like a giant neon shoot me sign. The HELIOS locks onto the leading edge of the missile. It doesn't even need to melt the whole thing. It just needs to warp the maneuverable re-entry vehicle fins by a fraction of a millimeter. At Mach 10, that tiny structural failure causes the missile to literally rip itself apart under its own G-forces. Beijing just watched $360 million worth of advanced rocketry vanish into the Pacific for the price of the diesel fuel used to keep the ship's generators spinning. The US destroyer still has 90% of its missile magazine intact, ready for the next wave. This isn't just a win, it's an economic collapse of the entire anti-ship strategy. When it costs you $1 to stop a $5 million attack, the enemy isn't just losing the war, they're going bankrupt trying to start it. The empty box problem. While China builds the high-tech snipers of the Pacific, Iran has mastered the chaos of the swarm. In early March 2026, the US Navy faced a nightmare that no computer simulation could fully prepare them for: the magazine depth crisis. See, Iran's strategy isn't about outfighting the US Navy. It's about making them run out of bullets before the real fight even starts. They've deployed the Abu Mahdi cruise missile, a 1,650-kilogram beast with a 1,000-kilometer range that uses artificial intelligence to pathfind its way around US radar horizons. It doesn't fly in a straight line. It hunts for gaps in the Aegis shield, like a wolf looking for a hole in a fence. At the same time, they launched the Product 358, a weird subsonic loitering interceptor that literally circles the battlefield at 600 miles per hour, waiting for a US helicopter or drone to show up. But the real financial horror story is the Shahed 139. Iran can mass-produce these suicide drones for about $20,000 to $50,000 each. When they launch a swarm of 60 drones, they are only spending about $1.5 million. If a US destroyer responds with its standard SM-2 or SM-6 interceptors, the Navy is spending $250 million to stop an attack that costs less than a single luxury condo. In the 2026 Red Sea skirmishes, US commanders realized they were winning every tactical battle but losing the logistical war. A single Arleigh Burke destroyer only has 96 VLS cells. In a massive multi-axis swarm, a ship can run completely dry in under 20 minutes. Until now, emptying the box meant the ship had to retreat 2,000 miles to a friendly port just to reload. But the game changed in late 2025 with transferable reload at sea method. This allows supply ships to reload those massive 1.5-ton missiles while moving at full speed in the open ocean. The HELIOS laser is the infinite magazine that takes out the cheap $20,000 drones, while TRAM ensures the $9 million missiles are always ready for the Mach 10 Chinese hypersonics. The axis of attrition just hit a wall made of light and high-speed logistics. The US Navy just found a way to make the enemy's entire swamping strategy irrelevant. Anyway, Beijing just traded their $360 million wall of steel for a few cents worth of electricity, and they're still staring at empty radar screens wondering where the money went. When the cost to delete a hypersonic is cheaper than a handful of gravel, the era of the carrier killer is officially dead. Smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next time we reset the math of war, and hit the like to fuel the algorithm. Comment light below. Is the missile era over, or does China have a countermove? I'm reading every strategy you guys drop.